Okay, people, it's looking like we've got a huge David update, okay, for the first time in a good few days, maybe a week. It's the first time that some new information has popped out that everybody is talking about, everybody is analyzing. I'm going to break it all down for you in this video. Okay, I got a whole bunch of links lined up. I'm going to share everything with you, but people are saying that David might be cooked after this new evidence comes out. They're saying that the OD theory might be out of the window. There might be another property that David had in the area. Celeste might have been living nearby, and yeah, this is just looking really, really bad, okay? If some of this stuff checks out, David might be cooked, might be over with, okay? So people are saying that this new evidence truly might change everything, okay? So look, people are saying, can someone confirm if this is true or not? Somebody posted, after weeks of silence in the shocking death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, new surveillance footage of singer David's Tesla has surfaced, and it changes everything. The private investigator who uncovered the video says it shows exactly when and where the luxury car was abandoned in the Hollywood Hills with Celeste's body inside. The LAPD has the footage. They know who parked that Tesla, but they're not saying a word. In this episode of Drop Dead Serious, Ashley Banfield breaks down the bombshell evidence, the growing pressure on investigators, and what this new video could mean for the case against David, okay? People are saying, isn't this literally a heads up for the killer to run away or something? They're saying the evidence, this new information is so good that if, like, the LAPD wouldn't have wanted David to know this, and he might actually be running away. They're saying, this is why the cops don't tell us nothing. This could hurt their investigation, but I don't know, all right? So they're saying that this could be major, all right? They're saying, but when I posted a YouTuber covering the case with potentially new info, I was gagged and hanged by this damn Reddit server who chanted, mods delete this. You guys believe whatever BS you want in this server and discredit whoever you want. It's all BS until the police back the information, okay? That's basically what is going on in this video. I'm going to show you the information, okay? People are saying, I'm just going to say it's David in that vehicle. If not, then it might have been someone he told to move the vehicle, but I'm still convinced only David had a motive and a reason to kill this little girl, but it's too late. Everybody now knows he dated a child. Now the whole world know that he is a pred. Okay, so this is another post. This was probably the biggest post that's been going around the David sphere in the last day. It says, exclusive, David private investigator knows who moved the Tesla with the body in the trunk. Okay, and people are saying whoever moved the car right now must be sweating. Okay, someone's saying, I literally called it in my new post before the video dropped. It probably happened at the old place that he was renting for $6,000. We at a tipping point. They're saying, when did he move into the last rental? 2024, February. Okay. So, yeah, this is crazy. So there's a few clips from this interview that are pretty interesting that I'm going to play to you. And he seems to hint, basically, this is the private investigator who'd been hired by the landlord, you know, the very well-known, all right, investigator that's been tweeting a lot about everything that's been going on. And he's basically going to explain some of the exclusive evidence that he's got that might give him an inkling about what was really going on with that car and the body.
To be honest with you, we don't have any evidence that anything happened to us at that house, but there's definitely evidence that we've collected that helps the timeline. We now have a much better understanding of when that Tesla arrived at that final parking spot. I'll tell you, I do have surveillance from different houses in the neighborhood showing the Tesla being moved. So things like that, and I'm not even saying that LAPD didn't have that. I'm sure they did, but we wanted to make sure, and and we did some work and on the up-resing the footage to find out who was driving the vehicle. And there are some other items that were found at the house that weren't taken during the search warrant. And search warrants are limited, right? They can't just go take everything. It's what the judge, and we don't know how broad that search warrant was because we haven't seen it, and that's what we like to see. But there were some things that were not taken into custody of LAPD that we think are significant, and including digital media and some other things that really help nail down timeline and things like that.
So he is saying that there were things that the police didn't take, or perhaps that the police couldn't take, that they did take, that on behalf of the homeowner, they have taken and they think are actually relevant. They actually could be interesting, and then they could contribute to understanding what went on behind the scenes.
And you handed that over to LAPD. There's other.
We have literally the day that we, the things that we've recovered, we've given to LAPD within 24 hours.
Do you know who was driving that car, that Tesla? You don't have to tell me, but do you know the identity?
Yeah, as far as going to the final, what we believe is the final parking spot where it was towed from, yes.
He says he knows who was driving that Tesla to the final parking spot. He says, we know. okay? And this is going to be major. Now, he doesn't end up saying who it is, but basically he says, we know who was driving that car when it was moved, and this is going to be major.
And that information's been communicated to law enforcement.
So it's been given to law enforcement. They're not going to tell us if they're confirming if that's a person or not. Robbery, homicide, the way they work is we'll take your information. We're not going to speak on it, so I don't know. But listen, it's very clear that that neighborhood is filled with surveillance cameras, and the timelines, once we learn those dates and we can see other things that were happening that were even public on Instagram and whatnot, were going on in those people's lives, it makes a lot of sense.
So he's saying that there's other properties with surveillance cameras that are capturing the footage of who's coming and going in that house around the neighborhood beyond the surveillance cameras that were actually taken from the home. Okay, that is pretty major. And so he's about to talk about how the body ended up wound up in the car in that particular position, and he's going to give some more interesting insights.
So let me ask you this. If you see when the car was parked there, have you seen anything to indicate that Celeste's body was transferred into that car after the car was parked there? Or in other words, do you believe that her body was in that car the minute it was parked in the location it was ultimately towed from?
So I'll say I have no evidence of a body being transferred before or after. There's no evidence of that at all. What I will say, when it was moved to that position, it was already like that. So that car had not been used in a very long time. It was super dirty, caked on dirt. I'll tell you, this was in late July. So it's bizarre because we also got media that the car was used a lot. David even spoke about it in Instagram videos. He took it to a detail shop and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, the very beginning of the year, that car, something happens, and that car's doesn't show up anymore. It's not used. It seems to disappear. And then that red Tesla learned, which we didn't know until the search warrant was served, that there's a red Tesla in the garage, which I can tell you was released on February 1st.
Very, very interesting. He says he usually had his cars detailed. He usually had his Tesla pretty clean. And then for some reason at the start of the year, he stopped driving that car. Okay. And it ends up getting moved to that position potentially in July. But he got a lease on another Tesla, a red Tesla that we haven't seen, that he's been driving since February. Why would he want to stop driving that particular car? Who knows? Could the car have already had something crazy go down in it? Was he planning to leave the body in the car? Was the car already containing a body and he couldn't drive it around? It's very interesting. Okay, it's actually very, very interesting.
Yeah, let me just narrow down here. Do you have the precise date of when that car, the one with the Tesla, with Celeste body inside, when it was left there? Do you know the specific date of when it was left in the Hollywood Hills?
I believe so. I believe it. Late July, very late July.
So one thing that we've heard, and this is something we've talked about, is the LAPD has seized footage from the rental property, multiple security cameras around the property. There are even reports of a smashed Ring camera on the ground. Yeah. And according to TMZ, police seized all the footage from multiple security cameras at the house last month when they executed the search warrant. TMZ described that footage as a, quote, potential gold mine for investigators. And the question becomes, did you see anyone coming into or leaving that property after the Tesla was there? So after the Tesla with Celeste body inside is there, can you tell us you saw people coming in and out of that property before the search warrant?
No, not from the time that the Tesla was left. So from the time the Tesla was left there, he literally immediately started the tour.
Now, the timing is interesting, right? He's saying from the time the Tesla was left there, he immediately went on tour. The dirty Tesla that hadn't been driven in months was dumped at that spot, and then he fled, got out there, went straight on tour. Now, that's very interesting too, right?
Tour bus that was leased, and I'll tell you that Tesla was moved, and literally a bus departed for tour.
Okay. You talked about things that might have been taken from the house, things that you handed over to LAPD. Is there anything you can share with us about what that information may be?
One thing that you just brought up, and I guess which TMZ reported on, the security system. The house has got a very sophisticated security system, not just with cameras, but with sensors and all types of things. It all records to a DVR. And for privacy reasons, the owner, when he leased the house, said, this is the system that's in the house, and you can use whatever functions you want on it. That's not something that then the owner could access. So we don't know if the cameras were enabled or not enabled, but if they were, it wouldn't just be cameras. It would be, we'd know anytime anybody came and went from the house, anytime anybody opened a window, everything, if they kept it like it was. But we don't know. LAPD came in and took that whole DVR. They took the entire system, which you would expect. And I've talked to the security company that installed the system, and they've told me, how it was set up. We think it was probably running because there's limited alerts that the security guy can see, which is stuff like if there's a major failure. And there was a low power failure warning that triggered right when they were executing the search warrant, and we think that's when they unplugged the system. So there's reason to believe that the system was running. Whether the cameras were covered or not, I don't know. I can tell you that some of the smoke sensors in the house were covered, and that's probably because maybe I don't know what they were doing in the house. So the cameras might have been covered as well.
During the course.
So he's making it clear that apparently he's got absolute confirmation that the security system was working. It had a low power alert when they executed the search warrant. So that means that there's no way that the system wasn't working. Now, whether or not David manipulated the system, covered up cameras, but it sounds like the system was on. He's not saying, cameras were all off. He deactivated the system. There's not. No, it sounds like there indeed is information. And when they described it as a potential goldmine for information, apparently that was true. So he's about to say something extremely interesting, right? Where he basically says, look, we recovered a lot of stuff, but we don't really have much evidence of Celeste at that property. All right, we have a couple pictures of her taken by David, but we don't know what type of phone that it was taken on. And essentially, he goes on to say that likely she had another place that she was staying nearby, and David had her parked off out the way and not at that property.
So, what we recovered, we don't have any of her at that property. We have pictures of her and that were taken by David, we assume, because it's not on a camera phone, but these photos are on a regular camera at different locations. And it really makes me think that it's likely she had another place she was staying. I can tell you that there was a lot of time spent towards downtown LA.
So they're saying, he's inferring that they spent a lot of time at another place towards or in downtown LA where potentially Celeste had her own place. She might have had her own place to stay. And I'm going to show you something in a minute that backs that theory up.
I'll say the last photo that we have of Celeste is January 2nd, 2025.
Okay, now that's significant because we were wondering when she was last seen alive. There was that surveillance footage of her seemingly running away from her neighborhood. And
that was September of 24, I believe. So we didn't have anything. We were like, where was this girl in 2025? But we do have a photo of her on July 2nd, early in the morning, July 2nd, 2025.
So he's saying that there is a photo of her that was taken on the morning of July the 2nd, 2025, and she was still alive in July 2025, which again contributes to that theory that she maybe lost her life towards the end of July or early August, right before that tour started, okay? So that's what's really information. Now, he doesn't say that he has any more information about when she passed away, but he does say some more interesting stuff later on. So he's about to touch on the potential overdose theory, and he's basically going to say that he can't really put too much faith in that theory anymore.
I also think when I first started looking at this case, I'm very much an Occam's razor type of person where I think things are a lot easier than people try to make them sometimes, especially online, into these big things. And I thought this was going to be a tragic overdose, which it very well still could be. And they made a bad decision because they didn't want to expose a potential relationship and put her in this Tesla. And then maybe he thought he could get somebody to get rid of that car. And they were just like, no, I'm not doing it, and just got left there. But I will say this, there are some things that, and I'm talking physical evidence that was at that house that is, there could have been greater plans as far as getting rid of her. And it's scary, sadistic stuff. And that's.
So he is saying that there's evidence, there's items, artifacts, potential tool. I don't know exactly what he's describing, but basically, look, I'm going to read between the lines. He said that he found physical evidence of that house that there could have been greater plans as far as getting rid of her. Buzzsaw, perhaps, more tarpaulin. I feel like what he's inferring here, just in my opinion, is that he's inferring that he's seen other things at that house, evidence of that house that made him think that there was going to be more work put in to get rid of that body and to try and cover this up. That's what I think he's saying, and he is saying from what he's seen, we don't know everything that he's seen, but from what he's seen, he no longer believes this tragic accident overdose theory, and I think that's major.
That's why we're trying to learn more about that. I wish I could say more about it for obvious reasons. I can't, but it doesn't have to do with how she died, but maybe how they were planning on ultimately getting rid of her, and how maybe that Tesla was just a holding spot at time, and things just, their timing was just off as far as getting this done.
So he is saying literally there might have been another bigger plan to get rid of her, and she might have just been put in that Tesla as a holding spot while they got things done, and before you know it, the body ends up getting found.
But there's a few things that were just like, will blow your mind.
He's saying the things he found in that house that the police didn't even take will blow your mind. All right. Look, I really want to know what he's talking about here. Okay. So he basically goes on to talk a little bit more about kind of any contact that he's had with David, the lease on the house, and he says a couple more things that are interesting. Then we're going to move on.
Anyone from David's team, management, legal, anybody reached out to you or your client?
I know that my client's been in touch with his manager, but only for the purpose of the lease, because they did ask to terminate the lease. And I believe the other manager that technically was the owner of the red Tesla, I think was in touch with him because they needed access to the house to get that vehicle and stuff out. Because that's another thing that they could be key in this, is that there's only one key to that house, and who had that and who had access to it and who was in it. Because we also have evidence that while David was on tour at the time between the Tesla being found and the search warrant being served, David was on tour, but somebody was in that house. And there was actually a report made, not the police, but that homeowner association has a robust private security company, and we've gotten videos from them and reports. And so who had that key is probably the same person that, had access to the Tesla.
So he's saying that while David went on tour, somebody had access to that property, and there's only one key to that property. And he's basically saying whoever that person who had access to the property probably had access to the Tesla, and they're probably they're in big trouble right now, because the LAPD saying, well, body in a Tesla, who had access to this? Okay, it's in David's name, sure, but what about you? So it's really a bad look.
Do you know who that person is, and do you believe that is the person that moved the Tesla?
So I definitely know who moved that Tesla on that late July before they went on tour. I can't say who the person, and I can't say
So look, I already heard part of this, and a lot of people, I'm going to show you in a minute, have been really analyzing these next words. Now, some people seem to suggest, okay, the fact that he said, so I believe I definitely know who moved that Tesla before they went on tour. Now, some people do feel like, because he said before they went on tour, he's kind of slipped up and he's basically saying, yes, David. Because he's saying, so I believe I know who moved the Tesla before they went on tour, or David went on tour. Unless it was somebody else in the entourage who went on tour, but it's just like, it might be a little Freudian slip of the tongue, but he might have just sort of inadvertently revealed, like before he went on tour, like, before my man went on tour, the guy with the tour. Not necessarily 100% sure, but I do think that's interesting.
I don't know who exactly was in the house, because it's just a report, but there's video.
So you notice he didn't say, oh, that person who was in the house was the same person who moved the Tesla. He didn't say that. He said they went on tour. Whoever moved the Tesla, in his opinion, is somebody who went on that tour, not somebody who was left staying in the house in charge of the Tesla. These are interesting details.
You can't make a person out, but somebody was in the house. And being that there's only one key, it's like, okay, who had access at that time? So is it the same person that moved the Tesla? Was another last part of the plan about to go in motion as far as getting rid of her body?
He's inferring that whoever that person was might have been complicit. He's saying, was there the final part of the plan about to go in motion as far as getting rid of her body? What were the artifacts that were left at the house? Were these artifacts that were left in the possession of a person left at the house? I'm not going to lie. Like, it sounded like he might have left somebody in that house with a whole mess and said, hey, you're going to have to sort this out. Maybe they didn't want to.
I don't know.
Now, we heard this week.
So basically, he goes on to talk about, the DA talking about the case. He didn't really say anything specific, so that's not that interesting. So he'll go on in a minute to touch on the dismemberment theory, and he's going to once again hint that there were some things in the property that maybe hinted towards them planning to chop the body up. So check this out.
For these charges, can you get it or not get it? Listen, a crime 100% happened here. At minimum, it's the concealment of a body, right? So we know somebody did that. Hopefully it's not, a mutilation. Hopefully those initial reports were wrong about her being dismembered. But one thing I have to say, even though I talked about how we found some things that could have meant they had a really twisted plan in place to get rid of her, it never went in motion. So
he's saying he has seen some things. He doesn't want to say what, but he has seen some things that hint towards a twisted plan being in motion to get rid of her body. I think he's talking about tools to cut up the body and get rid of the body. And he's saying that plan never went into motion. Very, very interesting.
So you can't charge somebody for a crime that they may have thought about doing. So, we may never know more about that.
So they're saying you can't charge someone with a crime they thought about doing if there were tools in the property that they were potentially, likely, possibly going to be used to cut up a body, but they were never used, then you can't charge them with doing that. Now, this was a really interesting interview, and I think the thing that he said about Celeste potentially having a property of her own, not too far from David, now this has been supported by another post that's been going around on Reddit. It's saying this is proof that David rented his first place in Hollywood while still renting a second. Was this Celeste's secret hideout? Now, this basically says, following on from the other post regarding his first rented property, why wasn't it searched? Was this where he kept Celeste whenever he went out of state touring? Did the incident actually happen at this address? It's effectively the same street 1 mile down from where she was eventually found. And yes, there's some property history someone's pulled up. I'm not going to show the location of the property in this video. People saying, I'm not going to lie, I'm proud of how locked in you are, man. And the guy's just saying, I'm just saying, look at the date. He got rid of it in March. Me and others have been speculating that something happened early this year, January, February, and all of a sudden the place was up for rent again in March. People are saying it's starting to add up. I remember when the OG sub was up, we would get flamed for saying she might have died in spring of this year, or early 2025. But now more and more stuff is pointing to exactly that. People are saying, interesting how it went up for rent in March. He no longer needed it for Celeste. That's not July, that's March. I swear this fits my timeline, okay? And SF just said it happened at a different address in that video, so this address must be it. He was still renting it until March 2025, and I called it out before that video dropped. So the internet detectives are absolutely grinding it out right now and trying to get to the bottom of this, okay? And this is more analysis from that video. People saying now it's getting interesting. Update: the PI in David's case thinks Celeste Rivas died in early 2025, January or February, at another home that David was renting that's 1 mile down the same street she was found. He also alludes that David's friend Neo may have been the one to move the Tesla, so people are suggesting this guy Neo might have been the one who was looking after that property. People are saying, why is this guy spreading misinformation? He never said anything about the house being 1 mile away. He didn't say that the house was 1 mile away. He said towards downtown, okay? And people have basically found this other property. Okay, people are getting flamed in the comments here, but then they're bigging it up in the other comments, okay? They're saying he never mentioned that house specifically. They're saying the only thing that holds me back from fully believing this timeline theory is that her brother said her last communication was sometime in July or August. Could it have been David himself keeping up the story? Perhaps we'll see. It's possible someone who wasn't Celeste was using her phone to text. If I recall correctly, the brother said their last convo was over text and not on the phone, so hypothetically, someone definitely could have been posing as her. Right? They're saying, yeah, if Celeste died early 2025, I find it hard for David to keep up all the conversations on her phone, especially since she may have used Spanish too. I'm thinking she died July 21st, and the 911 call was because they're fighting, so he turned up the music loud to mask her yelling. So people are going crazy for these new revelations. It's being posted in a whole bunch of different places. You know, the PI has done a few different interviews. He did one on News Nation. And everybody's commenting, basically saying more info released in this video. He says the video footage of the last time the car moved was July 29. He says the person left town after moving the car. He said the air freshener was put in there after moving the car for the last time, and the person was driving with the window rolled down. And he says you can see what the person looks like, what they're wearing. Pictures of the person can be seen 12 hours earlier, possibly in those party photos. So more and more information is coming out. People saying, listen to what the PI says. He says the Tesla is moved, then a tour bus pulled up right after. And then on News Nation, he said something similar. The person parked the car and then went on tour. Did Neo go on tour with David at all? Very curious if he maybe went for just a concert or two. And they're saying, yes, Neo went the first day, July 30th, in San Francisco. Asia went too. There he is wearing a Celestial Hello Kitty zip-up. First show of the tour. Went Hello Kitty on him. There you go, man. There you go. It's very interesting. People saying, I really wonder who it is. What do you think? I know friends are important, but the first person I would potentially call would be a family member. That's just me. And of course, hypothetically speaking, since I never plan on killing anybody, but it could be David still, could be Neo, but is Caleb old enough to drive? Then again, he says something about the person wearing the same clothing in the party photos. I really don't know. Has anyone checked Neo's Instagram? They're showing outfits, saying, I'm certain this is Neo one day before the tour inside David's house. There's the iconic piano. All right. People saying, Jesus Christ, if it does end up being this turbo idiot, then he's extra effed. The numbskull made a spelling and grammatical error, riddled Instagram post a few weeks back saying how the truth will come out and everything is going to be wrong or something. So yeah, there you go. It says the night Neo wore red and David wore a shirt saying smile if you're horny. It was Tara Yummy's 25th birthday party. Celeste Herrera and the others were also there. The day before, where David was wearing Sounds Gay, I'm In shirt. Won't be surprised if these are the so-called distinctive clothing that Steve is talking about, but his comments are a bit conflicting from the Law YouTube channel and what he said on Banfield, so at the moment, I'm still confused. And somebody's posting some of his tweets. It says, let's speculate that the Tesla was moved the last time and left in the parking spot it was impounded from right before the tour started in San Fran. But who actually moved the Tesla the final time? You don't get answers unless you ask, so I'll ask, was it Neo? Just curious. And people are posting this picture of them together. He's wearing that shirt that said horny. Got the red shirt there, very distinctive clothing, all right? So people are pointing the finger now and they're wondering who it is, all right? And then people are also reposting this new analysis of basically SF saying that he no longer believes it's an OD, basically recounts everything that he said in that Law and Crime interview we already saw. It says the private investigator mentions that at first he was leaning towards it being an OD and a panicked cover-up. However, it seems he's changed his mind because he uncovered a bigger plan to get rid of her. The evidence, which is very sadistic, that it would blow your mind. Those were his words. He strikes me as a very matter-of-fact person, not someone who sensationalizes things, so it's very telling he used such strong words. I think we're going to be in for a big shock when all these details come out. He thinks the body was found before this plan could unfold. If it was a simple OD, I don't think they could have planned a sadistic way to dispose of her body. Add to this the fact that David shows zero remorse in his social media posts, and some almost have a petty or passive-aggressive tone to them. Right? So, it's very, very interesting. Okay? It says, just the way David carried on touring touring and had no care she was missing made it seem deliberate to me. People saying not only did he not care, he was blowing hearts to other women and clearly had moved on with no issue. Soulless, right? So yeah, people saying he didn't just expect her body to be found and they hadn't identified her yet, so he probably thought he had a chance to form a defense until she was. Now he's shaking in his damn boots, and so are his accomplices. They're saying that's David right now, just buried in his own mess. Okay, everybody is just going crazy on Reddit over those interviews. Okay, they're saying big clues have been dropped. This one says Steve Fisher of SF Investigates was interviewed by Ashley Banfield and he dropped a major clue. He said he knows exactly who that last person who drove the Tesla was. He couldn't divulge the name, but he said the last person to drive the Tesla was caught on camera July 29th. He positively ID'd the same individual from said video from another video, possibly live streaming, shot inside David's residence 12 prior to the car dump video, because they were wearing the same clothes in both videos. So who has any video involving David from July the 28th? The answer lies within that media, and everybody's posting this picture of Neo. It's very likely Neo. This was in David's house one day before the tour. Notice the distinctive clothing that Steve was talking about. Let's point into that red shirt once again, right? People are mocking his fit. People saying, maybe it's Neo. No wonder he went private on all his socials, and Steve directly asked about him in a tweet a few days ago, which we already saw. So yeah, people saying, I also found it interesting. The PI also said that after the car was last parked, the tour bus pulled up immediately, and then said again on News Nation the car was parked and the person left on tour. Very interesting detail. Could be David who did it, unless Neo went on tour with him. He totally said whoever it was left town immediately after. It's only a matter of time before it gets out. I really wish there was a public video of him and his crew put out there on the 28th. That is what is the key, right? They're saying that this is David. Looking at the timeline, this post makes me so mad. All giddy over his tour, while a 14-year-old he groomed is dead in his car. Such a creep. And that's him saying, I need all the stays to sing with me on tour. Please, bro, please. He's going to be singing all types of song in a pen, man, I reckon. My personal opinion. In my personal opinion. All right, so everyone's analyzing Steve's wording on his interviews very, very carefully. Okay, this is what I broke down already, where it says, so do you know who that person is who moved the Tesla? I believe I definitely know who moved it. On late July before they went on tour. Okay, not before David went on tour. He says they. Does this mean that whoever was moving the car went on tour with David and was traveling him? I personally thought it could have been when he said they, he was referring to David. But he also mentions them back at the house while on tour. Wasn't there any pics of him live or streaming from that house in late August, early September when he had a couple of days off? I was wondering if he hinted at it being David. But people are saying that was debunked. The house he went back to was in Houston, and he did have a chance to go home on August the 2nd to the 5th, but we don't have any proof at the moment. So with all of this going around, okay, basically everybody's saying that it's over for David. They're reposting everything that was said, all the stuff that Steve Fisher has found. This is in reference to the surveillance footage that shows the last time the Tesla was moved. People are saying it's over, saying, bro, okay, now we want to know who last drove it. Everybody's trying to work it over. People are saying it's not over, but hopefully this will push the investigation forward. If LA can verify and confirm the information, the case could move regardless of the toxicology report. Some people are saying before everyone jumps to conclusions, it's good to remember private investigators and media reporters don't equal verified guilt. Let the facts come out. Still, this is looking heavy. I hope law enforcement handles it carefully. Okay. People saying, yet they still have the Epstein files under lock and key and are sitting. Man, I ain't trying to get iced out here, man. I got to be careful what I say. But anyway, this says is another clip that's saying Celeste was living in downtown LA. Not enough people are talking about these comments. He said that there doesn't appear to be evidence she was living with him in that house, and it seems she was living with someone in downtown. Pretty sure he said towards downtown. But anyway, this begs the question, who was she living with? For how long was she living with them? Was that person having access to David's Tesla? People are saying technically that spot isn't downtown LA. It's, however, down the street from Viero Drive House. Touche. I was just pulling from the words he used. I'm curious who was living at that residence. And they're posting the address of it, which he no longer lives at. So this isn't doxing anybody, but that address is about. It's about. I was trying to cover it up, but it's about. It's there. No one. Yeah. Oh, well. So a lot of people have been pointing out, hang on a sec. A lot of people have been pointing out that it seems like Celeste's social media accounts have been reactivated. People are saying, how are Celeste's social media accounts being reactivated then deactivated by her siblings? Do they have her cell phone? I highly doubt they would have her social media usernames and passwords because we know she didn't get along with them for one, and Celeste may have been gone from home for at least a year or close to it. So how are they logging into her accounts? Do they have her cell phone? And if they do, how did they get it? Police has never mentioned retrieving it or the data, etc. People are saying people are saying that that's not true. I did see reports that one account was active again, and people were speculating that the police might have been the ones to activate it and look through it, but people are saying that that's not true, so my bad. Now, this is another creepy clip going around that is showing David with an OTF knife 8 months ago. Now, I don't know if that's some kind of only the family knife, or I don't really be known about knives like that, even though I'm from London. But yeah, people are saying this is super creepy, and they're speculating and saying, is this part of the sadistic stuff that the PI might have uncovered at the house?
I don't even know if you're allowed to show knives on Twitch, but bro, look at this knife I got, bro. Chromium, chromacopia, chromacopia. Oh, you said don't show it? You can't? I can't? Are you for real? You lying? You lying? You lying? You lying?
So yeah, David was getting busy on there, man. People are saying, I bet that was to be used. If he openly shows a knife on stream, what else was he hiding behind closed doors, okay? People saying, yes, this is different than the music videos or his cosplay stuff. It's him in his natural environment with a real knife. Why has he got that knife? Why has he got that knife? What do you need that knife for? People are saying Steve Fisher said that the items discovered were most likely for getting rid of her remains, and they were large. I'm guessing some sort of power tools, a trash compactor, maybe a wood chipper. I hate to think about those things, but that's where my mind went when he said that. Now, another clip's been circulating where people are saying this is Celeste actually off camera. People are saying, I've just discovered this video clip in case others haven't seen it. Fast forward to 1 minute 40 seconds, where Neo and David both say Celeste to a third female that has a voice set very similar to the 14-year-old Celeste, and is not two of the females visible in the first segment or minute of the video. They quickly motion to her with their hand to keep her off camera. But then people are saying it's the older Celeste, Celeste Herrera. But let's check it out. Let's check it out.
Those are mine. Those are mine. No, it's Celeste. You don't want to play with us? That's water, guys. It's water. What is this?
So they're saying it was the other Celeste, but hey, man, it's definitely a little bit creepy. And when was this? This was July the 4th, 2025. Very, very interesting. Now, there's a new comprehensive timeline of the whole case that's dropped with some of this new information. Okay, this is in Dave Idiots. It says, resource, most of the up-to-date and comprehensive timeline of the David and Celeste case so far. We're looking for the most up-to-date timeline of the case. We're looking for a timeline that includes all the data. If you know of a timeline, add it in the comments. It's not been added yet, but I've seen a whole bunch of interesting timelines that will now need to be updated with some of these new dates in mind, because everybody is speculating when this person went on tour. We know when the tour happened. We know when the car was moved, all that stuff. So somebody's going to bring all of that together in one big timeline. I'm going to keep an eye out once they do actually put that together, because I'll come back and I'll break it all down for you guys. But yeah, that's the latest update, man. The private investigator is basically saying that there was all kinds of dark demonic tools in the house that he believes were going to be used to dispose of the body. He's saying that Celeste might have had her own house a little bit parked off just away from David, a mile down the road, and people are saying that that house suspiciously had the lease ended and it was back on the market in March of this year. So all of that together, I don't know if that's looking good for David, but still been no updates from the police, still no updates officially, still no suspects being named. So, hey, for all we know, David could be innocent. For all we know, okay? But the fact Steve Fisher is also writing off the OD story, I think that's really interesting, because that's one of the most plausible defenses that I think anybody has brought up in this situation so far. But we're going to have to keep waiting, man. So I'll keep you guys updated if I find any more info. Tap in with the other videos that I dropped yesterday. I'm talking about a whole bunch of different issues. I know some people are just here for the David stuff. Some people want to hear what else I got going on. I got members-only video on Jeffrey Epstein that I did for you guys a few days ago, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. And yeah, I'm going to do some more videos today on some of the other dramas going on, the Playboy Carti stuff, all of that, wife and Lucci thing going on. So I'll keep you guys updated. Thank you for tapping in and watching. I'll catch you in the next video. I'm out here. Peace, gang. Thank you.